Okay, guys, so picture this. You've just moved to a new foreign country. You're slowly getting to grips with a new language, a new culture, a new way of life, and essentially a whole new legal system. Suddenly, your whole world completely falls apart, and you're involved in a car accident. You now can't get to work, and your independence has been completely snatched away from you. You're feeling completely hopeless, out of your depth. So what do? You go onto Auto Trader, you find a car, meets all your needs, you make a blind leap of faith as to the seller's legitimacy, conduct an oral contract, just because you want to get the car as soon as possible. But then a month later, you find out the car was actually stolen, and you feel like you're back to square one, and now you've got £20,000 missing. So my client's issue was essentially about the innocent purchase of stolen goods and breach of contract. So her only chance to recover the money was to prove the existence of the contract, breach, and causation. The seller obviously had failed to provide her with good title, which is what caused her loss, and this is the point that she would have had to argue through court. But her chances of success were extremely low, as it was likely that the seller could have spent it, and the contract being so loosely created meant that she didn't really have much substance to cling on to. So as I was explaining this to her, and this is what really impacted me the most emotionally, was that I could tell that she'd walked in the clinic full of hope, full of optimism, and this was slowly withering away to just sheer disappointment. So I was torn between two moral standpoints. There was the side of me which wanted to sympathise with my client due to her honest mistake, as she had conducted her affairs completely in good faith, as after all, she was just a woman who wanted to get to work with a car, like we all do. But then on the flip side, I also wanted to penalise her for her naive behaviour, as she could have completely avoided this had she took the appropriate measures, had she conducted a better contract, a more watertight contract with guarantees, statements, and just more written evidence that she could show the court and enforce. But essentially, her chances of recovering the money were extremely low. And I think that these two conflicting moral standpoints, which I couldn't really get to grips with, so there was a human side of me which wanted to sympathise with her, as I just mentioned, but the lawyer in me wanted to say, wow, actually, tough luck. And this is what really impacted me was this kind of conflict in my head. And this is what essentially changed my views on contract and commercial law, which was originally an area which I thought I would go into, because I thought this is something which I feel would suit me, as it's quite rigid, it's quite strict, and I have that ruthless type of side to me. But then when I saw it in person, and I just saw to what extent a person in good faith can get completely can find themselves completely merciless at the expense of a rogue, because of the strict and formulaic way that that contract and commercial law operates. It kind of made me think twice. Like, do I have it in me to justify a body of law which is so inhumane and so robotic? But then on the flip side, another person may argue that this is actually the price that we have to pay in order to ensure that a standard is kept and that the judicial system isn't abused. Because after all, if we were to allow subjective tests of knowledge play a role in judgments, then the law would be in a completely unpredictable, chaotic mess, wouldn't it? But ultimately, this means that outcomes, like my clients, will often be unfair, and innocent parties will be left without remedies at the mercy of a rogue. And this is something which really had an impact on the way that I view commercial law, contractor law, and it did make me think, actually, maybe I'm more suited for human for more human areas of law, like for example family law, etc. I also found it even more shocking, and this client emphasised the degree to which again, in commercial law, money is power, and if you lack wealth, you can an innocent person can be placed in an even more vulnerable position due to their lack of money in the pocket, because it's essentially speaking, the more money you have, and the more, I suppose, the more powerful you are, in the sense that if you know the contract loopholes, you really can take advantage of vulnerable people like my clients. And this client impacted me in the way that it made me think on the wider scale of things, having seen it in person. But I would like to draw on how this case actually improved my approach and my communication throughout the rest of my journey as a client advisor, because essentially I had to deliver heartbreaking news to my client. I had to tell her that it was unlikely that she would ever get these £20,000 back. £20,000 may be all that she earns in a year. That could be her salary. This has had really large scale financial consequences for her. So having to deliver this bad news was something which I thought I would struggle with, because I am someone who says things very bluntly, very abruptly. I don't really cut corners, and I find it hard to sugarcoat things, which can sometimes get me into trouble, admittedly. But the best way that I found to deal with this situation was to actually turn a negative into a positive, and kind of show her that sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind in order to learn and in order to grow as a person. And so the way that I essentially did this was that I gave her a set of guidance about how she should go about her car, about any trades deals that she may conduct in the future. I gave her advice as to what she should do if she wanted to buy a car again, or just in general what she should do with contracts and things that she should look out for. And I found this to be quite a successful approach, as even though the clients may not have heard the outcome that they desired and the outcome that they were hoping to hear, I feel like if a positive learning curve can be drawn from the experience, and that the client gains valuable knowledge to take home and then apply to future scenarios and make sure that history doesn't repeat itself, I think that this is a really good way to go about things, as they might not leave with what they expected, but they still leave with a bit of hope that actually they've learned something from this, which can mean that they can prevent history from happening again. And I think that is really a crucial point in the profession of a solicitor. And again, this client meeting really impacted all of my future client meetings, as this is the approach which I found to be successful from the beginning, as this was my first client, and I continued repeatedly applying it throughout my whole experience, throughout my whole time as a student clinic advisor. And I found this to be really successful, and I think that this client's had a really positive impact on the way that I conducted my future client meetings, in the sense that my attitude towards each case was a positive one. And I think that on a wider scale, in the profession of a solicitor, you are going to have to deliver disappointing outcomes, and you are going to have to explain and apply a body of law which you don't think is fair. But if you can even just shed a positive light on the whole experience, and emphasise on guidance, and emphasise on learning curves, then you will find the profession of a solicitor to be much more rewarding. And I think that this is really the biggest impact that the client has had on me. Okay, thank you for listening.